Book 5, First and Last. Shoto woke up in the hospital. The evacuation mission in Jako City turned out to be a full battle war. His head ached as memories of that fateful day came back. It turned out that Dabi was his own brother, and his only goal in life now was to bring their father to hell. Yes, Endeavor had not been a good father, but he cannot let the fact go that Dabi killed so many innocent lives. His whole family will surely be bombarded with questions and plenty of accusations. His thoughts then moved to Kazumi. He looked at his burnt body wrapped with gauzes. He better get a clearance from the hospital quick so he could check on her personally at Tartarus. "You're awake, young Todoroki." It was Principal Nezu. "I'm sure you want updates on everyone, but let me start with the ones more relevant to you. Your father was badly burnt and beaten, but he will survive. The press are feasting on the controversial revelation by Dabi, and UA lawyers are currently handling the media relations." Principal Nezu then paused. For a calm person, he suddenly seemed a bit unsure on how to continue. "I've gathered from your father before that Kazumi is someone important to you, so I will let you into this information." Shoto's senses suddenly went on alert mode. Yesterday, Tartarus was attacked. All for One escaped, and he took his great-granddaughter with him. Isn't Tartarus supposed to be the safest place in the country? Shoto sounded calm, but highly accusing. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. There was no one to blame. Even with all the pro-heroes present at Jako City, they were still unable to capture Tomura Shigaraki. "We are doing everything to get intel, but we are quite certain that young Kazumi is being held alive by the League of Villains. Many witnesses said they heard Tomura yelling to get Kazumi, and make sure she's not harmed in any way." After a few more updates, Principal Nezu finally left. Shoto stood and stared at the glass window. He had to get her back, but he had to be realistic and listen to the future plans of the authority and of pro-heroes. And perhaps his role to bring her back to safety is by facing his own brother in the war that was about to come to them.
Our father can't stop Toya. I have to be the one to handle my brother.
Shigaraki Tomura. "You said no harm should come her way. You better keep your word, because I'm coming for her. I'm coming for you, Kazumi." And before long, the final war began. The road to peace came with a lot of losses and deaths. But All for One was finally defeated. Dabi and Tomura Shigaraki was held in a highly secured rehabilitation center. Shoto failed to attend many ongoing ceremonies to recognize fallen heroes. He spent his time in the hospital, where Kazumi was confined. After the war, Kazumi was found unconscious with minor wounds right beside All for One. But once she was diagnosed in the hospital, it turned out all her injuries were internal. And it had been 2 weeks now, and she still laid unconscious in bed. The doctors had been doing everything they can, but still, they cannot guarantee if she would ever wake up again. Ray and Fuyumi had been visiting her every day, and to bring Shoto food and fresh clothes, since he had been sleeping in the couch next to her bed. Natsuo and his father would also visit separately, not just for Kazumi, but also to check on Shoto, who despite winning the war, seemed anxious and distressed. "Hang in there, Kazumi. I'll be here when you wake up," he whispered to her one night. He sat next to her bed and held her hand. Then he started to cry, but he wiped it right away. "This is not me giving up, okay? I will never give up. I just I just miss you so much. That's all. Shoto cried quietly until he finally fell asleep. Shoto. It was so soft, but he heard it. He stood up, surprised, and checked on her immediately, but she was sleeping. He then ran outside and yelled for a doctor. A doctor and a nurse came running to her room. She talked. She called my name. I'm not sure if she opened her eyes and saw me or if she was just murmuring in her sleep, because she normally does that. Okay, slow down, Todoroki Shonen, the doctor said. She appears to be sleeping soundly now, but that definitely is a very good sign. There's a chance that her consciousness is coming back. It's just that her physical body is still weak. So what could we do now? Should I try to wake her up? She must be hungry when she wakes up. I better call my sister and bring some food. Shoto was all over the place. The doctor had to calm him down. He placed his hand on his shoulder and said, Take a deep breath. You yourself need to rest. You're still recovering from your injuries too. I know you are worried, and we are doing everything we can for her. But for now, we will scan her vitals and see if anything changed. After checking on her, the doctor and the nurse left. Shoto closed the door. Are they gone? His eyes widened as he heard her voice again. He turned slowly, not knowing if he was hallucinating, and saw her eyes wide open. Don't call the doctor. I just want you, she said right away, then smiled weakly. Shoto could not contain his emotions. Tears of relief and joy started flowing from his eyes as he walked slowly towards her. He then collapsed on the chair beside her. He held her hand to his face and just cried. Don't you ever sleep that long again. 'Cause every day I wanna be better. I wanna give what you've given me. My world, you're the center. Kazumi's identity had been kept under wraps. The Pro Hero Core group made a news block out about her being in the battleground scene. They excused her absence in UA during the war as her support skill was being needed in a pro hero agency. But people who knew though started swarming Kazumi's room as soon as they learned that she had woken up. First were his mother and siblings. Fuyumi even told her that they renovated the house after the war and there is a room for her and it's right next to Fuyumi's. Next came Principal Nezu, Recovery Girl, Mr. Aizawa, and together with them was All Might and Endeavor. His father stayed a bit longer though than the others. He didn't say much, but he was relieved that she was okay. He also apologized for not being able to save her on time.
I'm sorry I couldn't be there to protect you.
She smiled and told him that Shoto said the same thing when he first saved her from an incoming truck. Shoto smiled too. If she compared him to Endeavor a year ago, he would have glared and cursed. But there had been so much progress with his relationship with his father. But of course, so much still needs to be done. But slowly, the Todorokis are trying to patch things up. Yeah, he's slowing down, getting old. Probably needs to retire soon. Shoto criticized, but they all knew it was meant to lighten the mood. Endeavor smiled too, tapped his son's shoulder twice, and left. The next visitors were their friends who really knew her background.
Bakugo.
Shoto said when he opened the door. Takeda didn't wait for him to completely open it. She pushed and burst it open. Kazumi! She exclaimed and jumped on her bed. She was then followed by Bakugo, who looked like he was forced to hold a bouquet of flowers. Here, told Kira to buy the most poisonous one. Let's see if she did what she was told. Don't believe his nonsense. He told me to choose the brightest looking flower. He even grabbed the white and red wrapper for the package. Said it will remind you of Shotokan. Ha! That's not. Bakugo was interrupted by a knock on the door. It was Midoriya and Ida.
And I see the others are here too.
Don't ignore me!
Hey, Izuku, Tanya! Takeda greeted, completely ignoring Bakugo's unfinished sentence. Oh, you're here, Midoriya said. We were trying to catch you and Kachan earlier after Edge's ceremony, but we lost you at the train station.
What did you say?
You lost us? Maybe we were just avoiding you, Bakugo yelled. No, we weren't. We really didn't see you, Izuku, Takeda yelled back. Well, I saw them. That's why I grabbed you and told you to walk faster. Look, we bought you a cake along the way, Ida told Kazumi while the other three were still debating amongst themselves. Why don't I make some tea for us? Kazumi tried to leave the bed and stand up. Whatever everyone was doing or saying, they stopped and gave all their attention to Kazumi. Don't be an
stand
idiot!
up!
They all yelled. I will make the tea. Just sit back and relax. Takeda stood up and went to the pantry. I am not crippled. I can do it. So why don't you all chill out? Kazumi said, but Takeda kept pushing her back to bed. Hide the tea bags, Izuku. Don't let her near it. Oh, if she's too stubborn, then let her do it.
Everyone, please stop! You're gonna make the world think UA's full of degenerates!
Ida said. Shoto just watched them. He didn't tell them anymore that Kazumi had been walking and bouncing around her room in the hospital hallway since last night. So her making tea for everyone was no feat for her at all. He smiled with all the chaos. 2 years ago, he could never have imagined his life to be so colorful as today. Now, he has friends. And much more, he has someone he truly cares for, and he knows that cares back for him. They were being too noisy, but he liked it. He will just let Ida take the stress of calming everyone. By August, school resumed in UA. The school year had been adjusted because everyone needed to rebuild after the war. Kazumi and Shoto are now on their third year in UA. Principal Nezu called Kazumi out from one of her classes by mid-September. He informed her that Tomura Shigaraki had been asking for her, and she might want to meet him at the rehab center. You don't have to do this if you don't feel comfortable, Kazumi, Shoto said after she updated him of the news. She took a deep breath and replied, But he might be able to complete my memory. Since Kazumi regained consciousness, a small part of her memory had been missing. When the League of Villains have kept her in prison, Tomura had been talking to her before All for One met her. Then she blacked out. Her next memory was waking up to Tomura decaying her cage and setting her free. Then after that, she blacked out again. When she opened her eyes, she was with Shoto in the hospital after the war. It was a small trauma according to the doctor, and that most of the time it will come back to the affected patient. To some, it may take days. For others, it could be years. Okay, whatever you decide, I will be there. Shoto squeezed her hand. On the day of meeting Shigaraki, Principal Nezu brought All Might, Endeavor, Eraserhead, and Tsukochi. Shoto was also present, as that was the only request of Kazumi if she was to do this. Kazumi entered the room with Tomura. It had a big one-way glass where the others, including Shoto, can watch and hear them. Tomura's hands were covered with some metal-like cuffs and were chained to the chair, while Kazumi held a device that she could squeeze anytime she felt she wanted or needed to be pulled out. Shigaraki Kazumi. He said her name. She said nothing back. She only looked at him. How? She waited for him to complete his question. His eyes looked really sad. How did you do it, Kazumi? Everyone turned their back on you, left you alone in the streets, shunned you into the dark alleys. But how? How can you not hate them? They did so much wrong to you. You don't hate them either. She said in a matter-of-fact voice, "Oh, I hate them. I hate the world." That was just what All for One fed you. You were a scared little kid, and he manipulated you. Kazumi tried to remember the days she had been in prison in the headquarters of the League of Villains. Tomura would talk to her about how ugly the society was, but it contradicted with his eyes and his voice. She remembered him getting mad at All for One, begging him to set him free, and that he wanted his own life back.
I told you before, Master. This is my body, not yours.
It's not too late, Tenko. Yes, you need to answer to the law. More importantly, you deserve to forgive yourself. And that's something no one can take away from you. Your inner peace. Society can be cruel, but most of the time, they are just scared too. I could not choose the name I was born with, but I still have a choice on how to live my life. Yes, I've been running, but that's not society's fault. It was All for One. He had been trying to kill me, and that forced me to move into the shadows, Kazumi explained. Kill you? Tomura repeated, suddenly confused. Kill you? But he made you. Your parents and grandparents only died because they were not the perfect vessel. But you are. The perfect vessel? All for One had plenty of quirks he wanted to acquire, but he could only stock a maximum number of it. He needed a vessel, a holder where he could keep the rest of the quirks. So he created in his bloodline the most quirkless person he could. He made 2 quirkless people conceive. Once the baby is out, he tried to transfer some of his quirks. But the child always dies because their bodies could not handle it. So he forced another line of quirkless descendants to conceive. But they are always a failure. All for One's quirk was untransferable, Shigaraki explained. But with you, he was successful. He transferred the power to steal and bestow a quirk. Yes, you fainted, but you did not explode like what happened to your other ancestors. Kazumi's head throbbed as some flashes of memories came to her. She massaged her forehead as the headache begins to intensify. Let's get her out. Shoto became worried, but Aizawa held him. It's okay, Todoroki Shonen. She's not pressing her alarm. It means she wants to stay. So that was it. The pain I felt when he touched my head. But you freed me. I now remember it. You decayed the lock and the cage. And then you let me go. Why? Because I realized he was making another me in you. I wanted this. But you never wanted it. Kazumi thought about his words. So, you saved me. To everyone's surprise, Tomura laughed. It was sarcastic though. I saved you, and in turn, you put me here in jail. I put you in jail? What do you mean? Huh? Tomura looked at her, confused once again. I can't remember what happened after you freed me. That was the last of what I recall from that day. Shigaraki looked at her with wide eyes and mouth slightly opened.
You gotta be kidding me.
You don't know? He then turned his face on the one-way mirror to look at the people he knew were watching them. None of you knows. Let me guess, Kazumi. You've been hiding under a different name, right? Even until now. Because people will condemn you for being a Shigaraki. And yet you still did what you did. What did I do? Everybody thinks the heroes won the war. But no, 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 no. After they subdued All for One, thinking him dead, All for One activated his rewind quirk. He only needs a few minutes and he'll be back in his prime. But then here comes his little great-granddaughter, who I told to run away. I said away. But the moment you saw the Todorokis being hammered down, you went straight to All for One, who was lying on the ground. By this time, more images came to Kazumi. Her heart also started to pound as her memory, although still clouded, confirmed what she was hearing from him. Tomura continued his narrative, and without second thoughts, without any knowledge of how your new quirk works, he touched All for One's head and stole all his powers, including his rewind, making him unable to regenerate from all his wounds, which eventually caused his demise. You finished the war, Kazumi. Everyone's eyes widened as they heard what happened behind the scene of the main battlefield. Kazumi froze. She looked at her hands. Her hands had contained so much power now. She could have hurt so many people with it. She managed to stand up and open the exit door by herself without pressing the device she was holding. As soon as she came out, Shoto shielded her with his body, creating a wall between her and the others. "What do you plan to do with this information?" he asked, protecting her from everyone who looked very alert. "Todoroki, I cannot see her," Aizawa said. His hair was up, an indication his quirk is activated. As a reply, Shoto kept her even more covered at his back and held her hand. "I'm not going to let you do anything to her." "Shoto," he heard her whisper his name. "It's okay, Kazumi. I'm here."
I've got this.
"It's fine, Shoto. Let's allow Razorhead to see me," Kazumi told him, but she held Shoto with both her hands, gathering strength from him. "I will also not allow anything bad to happen to her son." Shoto looked at him and felt his sincerity. He relaxed a little and moved a few inches aside. Aizawa finally had a glimpse of her as a precaution. She had all for One's power, and she had no idea how to use them. If she unintentionally unleashes them, she will be one lethal weapon. The tension was finally getting low as they all processed the information. They immediately had her examined by quirk doctors to assess how many powers she had, Aizawa never leaving her side. For more than a week, she had been absent in school. Aizawa only focused her on training how to transfer a quirk. It had been decided that she would return those quirks that had been stolen or copied, specifically that of Ragdoll and Eri. The rest were transferred to All Might, as he was the most experienced wielder of transferred powers. But he would remain as a full-time teacher in UA. No more hero works for him at all. The only quirk that remained with her was her great-grandfather's original quirk, the power of stealing and transferring. The doctor said, though, that by genetics, she remained quirkless. She will not be able to transfer All for One's quirk to her children because it was only bestowed on her. Just like One for All, Midoriya cannot have his future children inherit it unless he transfer it to them just how All Might did. And thus will be the end of the era of All for One and One for All.
After winter break.
We own this whole stretch of land out here, everything you can see. The summer camp you're staying at is there.
The third-year support classes were brought to the Pussycat camping grounds for training. Even after the war, UA curriculum became more strict. Support classes now are expected to face battle trainings, so when crisis comes, they would at least be able to defend themselves. Class 3C to 3H were sent to camp training for 5 days. Ectoplasm, one of the third-year homeroom teacher, announced their objectives and schedules on their first day. For 5 days, we aim to enhance your mental and physical abilities. On the fourth day, the top 3 students of the Hero course from Class 3A and 2A will be here to help with the camp training. At the mention of this, Kazumi perked up. Although she had spent the holidays with the Todorokis and took a trip with them at Namasaki, she had already been missing Shoto. She should be used to it by now, since lately, UA's Big Three had always been requested for missions even outside Japan. And it wasn't just Kazumi that was excited. The other students started chatting about them too, because it cannot be denied that these 6 students had received a lot of admiration and crushes from their schoolmates. Silence, Ectoplasm said. He then proceeded to explain that the battle will be one class of 20 students versus one Hero Course student who will act as a villain. The hero villain will be given 20 minutes each to tie a ribbon on all 20 students. But if after the time limit, and if one of them was left untied, then their class have won. He then continued, your class will be provided with videos and booklets that contain their quirk profiles, documentaries of their previous exercises and training battles. You will study your assigned hero villain. For the next 3 days, you will breathe and obsess yourselves with your assigned heroes. You could design and use whatever support items you need to defeat them. You are given the authority to not hold back. The support class students gasped at this instruction. Their support items can be built to destroy and kill, and they were now being told that they should not hold back. Is this how Hero Corps students do their regular training? No wonder they seldom see Recovery Girl outside the clinic. She must be super busy with them all the time. You will also have the advantage of the terrain, as you could choose where you would like the battle to take place. Currently, they have no idea that they will be pulled out from their classes on Thursday to participate in this activity. They will have no mental or physical warm-up. The teachers then handed out all the paraphernalia for them to prepare for Thursday, and they wasted no time in discussing and brainstorming within their class. They were given free hand to explore the Pussycat grounds, to familiarize themselves and create traps if they wanted to. The laboratory to create their items have been buzzing non-stop as well. These support class students were giving their all. Many even stayed late at night just to ensure that all was going according to their plans. Kazumi's class was assigned to battle with Shoto. She dreaded it. She knew how capable and strong Shoto was, but her class was really not holding back with all their plans. And she knew that she should not let her personal feelings intervene, because this is a training meant to prepare them all in the outside world. Her classmates pestered her with all the other info that was probably not available in the booklets about him. However, the only weakness she could think of was that his attacks can be wide-ranged, and since he was going to work alone in this exercise, then it would not be a weakness at all. But their class rep got an idea. Finally, the day they had been preparing for had come. Ohio. I'll just start a short summary of what's going to happen today. Mr. Aizawa greeted everyone. Yogan Kazan, Doro Taketa, Mizuyo Takida, Todoroki Shoto, Bakugo Katsuki, Midoriya Izuku. Today, you are not heroes. You will be villains. Each of you will be assigned to one class. Your goal is to tie each and all of them with a ribbon in less than 20 minutes. And that was all Aizawa said. No pep talk to motivate them. No advance notice that the support class students had prepared for this for the last 3 days, and that they were informed not to hold back. In fact, Mr. Aizawa added an information that surprised the support class students even more. The hero villains will also wear stranglers all over their body to ensure that they could only use 40% of their quirks and physical abilities at all time.
Prepare for intensive training. I expect each of you to go plus ultra. Do you have it in you?
Yes, sir!
Class C, you are assigned with Dynamite. Bakugo, that means you are up first. Let's begin. The 6 battles ended a little after noon, with all the hero villains winning against the support classes. Kazumi's class was able to subdue Shoto's use of his quirk through an illusion. One of Kazumi's classmates had a quirk that can change the face of a person for 30 seconds. So whenever Shoto was about to unleash a full-blown ice or fire attack, one of their classmates would throw themselves in the middle of the battlefield and have their physical features changed to Kazumi. At first, it took Shoto by surprise and he completely held back his attack. But after the first trick, it would only take him a millisecond to know that it was not Kazumi. The slight delays and restrained attacks, though, still weren't enough to win against Shoto. After tying all of Kazumi's 19 classmates, he came for her. Kazumi, whose support items were already damaged, waited for him to come nearer so he could tie a ribbon on her. When he did, she took him by surprise when she pulled him and did a self-defense stunt she learned from Takeda before. Shoto landed on his back. Kazumi trapped one of his hands and sat on his stomach. She may have gotten him off guard, but he was not one of UA's big three for nothing.
Good job,
Ectoplasm told Kazumi.
but you're out. Todoroki wins.
What? Kazumi was surprised. Shoto smiled and held out her other hand, where he already had a ribbon tied. She glared at him and pouted. During lunch break, Shoto waited for Kazumi with Midoriya, Bakugo, Takeda, and Kota and sat by the nearby stone bench. All of them were laughing as Bakugo lost to a prank with Takeda, which ended up with him wearing a pink jacket.
I'm gonna annihilate you, Deku. And you too, Icy Hot! You bastard!
Bakugo yelled. Hey, language. Kazumi reprimanded Bakugo as she approached them with a box of medicines and band-aids. Move it. She then told Bakugo, who was sitting right beside Shoto, and sat between them. She then dabbed some medicines on his arm that had open wounds. He got minor injuries only, so he didn't go to the clinic anymore. But Kazumi insisted that they clean it. Bakugo peeked over her shoulder to watch her tend to Shoto's wounds. Huh, you do know that he had lots worse than that, right? He just wants you to baby him. Shoto ignored him. He was right, though. But he liked it when Kazumi takes care of him. So he's guilty that sometimes he acts like he needed all those pampering. But he was surprised when Kazumi replied casually. Oh, I know that. But I like taking care of him. She then gently covered his wound with some gauzes. Huh! Bakugo smirked. Hey, what are you whispering about? Takeda pushed Bakugo's shoulder and peeked at them. Ah! Bakugo moaned and touched his shoulder. What? That part is quite bruised. Then why didn't you go to the clinic? Wait here, I'll get some ointment inside. Kazumi's eyes widened in disbelief. Really, Takeda? You're falling for his tricks? Takeda looked back confused. Huh? Takeda, he just wants to be babied. Don't mind her. I'll wait for you here, Bakugo said. Kazumi laughed at him when Takeda was already out of hearing distance. You're impossible. You should just confess to her soon. She then turned her attention back at Shoto.
You were amazing out there too!
Pulling that final move on Todoroki, and your class was quite sneaky, using your face as an illusion to distract him, Midoriya said. Yeah, that's a good strategy. It's very specific for Icy Hot, though. Because if they used the same tactic on me, with Kita's face, I would attack right away. Because if I don't, she would have blasted my head off in an instant. She will show me no mercy at all. Midoriya laughed. Yeah, I imagine she would. Oh well, I'll go ahead, guys. Our class wants to meet up before the afternoon starts, Kazumi said. I will redress your wounds before dinner, Shoto, and after you bath for sleep, okay? And then she started walking away. Shoto watched her walk, and he must have been smiling dreamily while he watched, because Bakugo nudged him. Hey, Earth to Icy Hot! I have a question, Bakugo. Eh? Takeda and your mom have a good relationship, and we all know that you two are basically a couple. We're just waiting for you to mature and confess to her. Get to the point, Bakugo said impatiently.
It's not exactly an easy subject to broach.
You see, Kazumi and I had a slight argument, although it was puzzling because I really didn't understand what we were quarreling about.
I feel kind of bad.
So I went to ask my mother, but Kazumi was talking to her already. Then the next thing I knew, I was apologizing to Kazumi for something I totally have no idea of. Bakugo laughed at him, and he was laughing so hard. Shoto glared at him. Why did I even ask him? He thought. Not only will I not get an answer, he now has something to make fun of for me being unmanly when it comes to Kazumi. Then to his surprise, when Bakugo finally stopped laughing, he tapped him on his shoulder and said, "Welcome to the club, Todoroki." Shoto looked at him, shook his head, and chuckled. That night, Shoto invited Kazumi to take a stroll in the Pussycat Forest, like they usually do in UA grounds after dinner.
Come with me.
What's that in your bag? Kazumi noticed Shoto carrying a lunch bag. A bottle of water, because you easily get thirsty, and a thermos of hot tea. He said, lifting his bag, then noticed she had a bag herself as well. What's in your bag? Your favorite sponge cake, because I know you will bring tea, she said and chuckled. They chatted and joked a lot while strolling. Kazumi smiled while listening to Shoto. He had grown so talkative and funny over the years they had known each other, and he now has a plethora of idioms ready at his disposal anytime. But when with others, his usual unbothered look would unintentionally emerge. But that's fine. Kazumi doesn't mind at all. She doesn't like sharing him anyway.
The rise and fall of your breathing is all I'm wanting to look at. It's been many dawns and many nights. I swear to you now, it'll be for life. Baby, I love you.
I gave Fuyu Minichan the list of all the cities we're going to. And now my brother is arguing on where we should go to first. Mother is contemplating that she might join too on the next trip. Although she planted this very sensitive flower in the garden, saying it will wither if someone other than her will water it. So unless she gets a gardener that's a flower whisperer, then maybe she would come. And I want to be her last. Also, Fuyu Minichan adopted a stray cat. Stop. Could you say that again? Which part? Shoto asked, pretending to act confused. You want to be my last? Oh, you heard it. He said softly. There was a slight fear in his voice. Well, I always listen to every word you say. I see. You don't seem to be freaking out with it. Kazumi knows that look. He was trying to play it down, pretending it was not a big thing. But you could see that he was the one freaking out. She gave him a very, very tiny smile just to encourage him to say some more. He took a deep breath and said, I have really been thinking about us for quite some time now. So this is not a spur-of-the-moment thing. I know we are still very young, although I turned 18 already, and you will be too in a couple of months. But every day, I become more sure of the future I want and who I want to share it with. I even talked to my mother because I didn't want to scare you. So you don't need to reply with all of the things I will say to you tonight. I just want you to listen and to think about it long and hard. Shoto paused to take a deep breath again. Kazumi didn't dare interrupt him. She just stood there, taking in every word he was saying. You always say that I give you too much, but that is so far from the truth. The trips we are taking, putting happy memories on those places you've been, I only got that idea because of you. For 15 years, my house had been a nightmare for me. Our workout room was the worst, because that's where I spent my childhood. Alone, tired, beaten to exhaustion, full of hatred. But now, I go home, and I see an image of you sleeping in our couch. I hear your laughter in the garden with my mother, my sister giggling in her room when you watch dramas with her. And the workout room doesn't smell of tears and anger anymore. Remember when I went biking with you to deliver flowers before Christmas? I wasn't lying when I said I knew how to bike, because we have a stationary bike as one of our equipment. But to bike outside, that was the first time. So now, whenever I work out, I start and end my session with a bike, because I could smell the winter breeze of Tokyo. You're changing my sad core memories into happy ones. Well, not really changing, because I have learned to accept my past. I no longer need to bury it and pretend it never happened. Shoto then started to cry softly. Kazumi wanted to hug him, but she was afraid it would interrupt him from opening his heart. So she waited patiently until she feels he was done talking. It is a part of who I am now. I don't have to forget where I came from. Because you made me feel that it's okay. That I am okay. And that I am more than enough. Shoto paused again. Kazumi couldn't contain her tears. His words were so beautiful. They stared at each other, just adoring each other's tear-stricken face. They were not saying anything, but so much was being said by their eyes. Then Shoto finally continued. You said, I am many of your first. Kazumi, can I be many of your last as well? The last boy you'll hold hands with. The last boy you will hug. The last boy you will ever like.
Baby, I love you. Everyone knows I do.
When he asked her those questions, that was her cue that he's done talking. She tilted her head, kissed him, and replied, You didn't even have to ask it, Shoto.
It starts and ends with you and me. Baby, I love you. Everyone knows I do.
Shoto then took the ring his mother gave him when they talked about Kazumi and said gently, I will do everything just to give you the world, because you deserve nothing less. He then slid the ring in her finger. Just say you're mine, then you've already done it. Because you are my world, Todoroki Shoto.
Every bit about us is amazing. Yeah, let's face it, we all know it's true. I wanna marry you.
The night crickets were singing in their background. The moon was shining full and bright, and a group of falling stars were dancing in the sky above them. But they didn't notice any of it. At that moment, they were only seeing each other. So does this mean when I turn 18 this year, we'll get married? Kazumi giggled as they strolled back to their own huts. Shoto laughed. I told you to think about it long and hard first. Oh, I've known from the start it's you. From the moment I gave you my real name. So, going back, when I turn 18 we could get married? She eagerly asked. No, because we still need to finish college. Okay, so after college we could get married? Well, we need to work for a couple of years. Fine, so after 2 years of working we could get married. Shoto paused and thought of another reason just so he could mess with her. Well, we still need... Shoto! Don't make it too long. We're still going to make babies. Babies? Shoto couldn't stop laughing so hard. His stomach started to ache. And here I was, so afraid that I was going to freak you out with my marriage confession. Kazumi tried to look at him seriously, but his laughter was slowly contaminating her. I'm going to buy a calendar as soon as we get back to school, so we could start plotting. Okay, you do that. We also need to discuss how many babies we're going to have. I'm thinking 2 or 3. 2 or 3? Kazumi shrieked. Too much? He asked. Well, pregnancy he knew was not easy, and it was Kazumi who would be carrying it for 9 months and bear the pain during delivery. But to be honest, he really wanted a big household. And then Kazumi replied seriously, I'm actually thinking of maybe 4 or 5.
I could try.